Happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Cali Alpert. Cali, thanks for coming in.
Hi, Norm. Thank you so much for having me.
Cali,
Happy
who
to be here.
amongst a couple of dozen, I'm not exaggerating, other things, is also or has been a professional interviewer.
I have.
Which is super amazing. And you also teach interviewing.
I do.
And this is an offering on your, what's the new website?
Theinterviewer.net. It's a double N, so it's a takeoff on interviewer. Get it?
Interviewer.
Yeah, I have my boyfriend to credit for that name.
It's spectacular because it's all about, understanding who you are and what you are and how you got to be who you are and taking that into the world of you making your dreams come true.
Thank you.
Did I do that okay?
Yeah, I love that. And it really, I'm still working on the framework of who I am and what I'm doing these days because I'm in a new kind of like chapter with a reset and a blank canvas. So you just helped me mirror it back. So thank you.
Good, mirroring it back. That's fabulous. And let me just say this again. It's theinterviewer.com. .net, which is a play on all your decades as an interviewer. This is the interviewer, which is so good.
Yeah.
And so when you have a bunch of offerings.
I do.
For people, and it's mostly one-on-one kind of stuff, if I read your website correctly. But one of them is teaching people how to interview. And I'm really curious. I read that. I'm like, oh, good. Tell me.
Well, you don't need any help. So let's keep you out of this formula.
So
but
all right, fine. Some stranger comes in. How do you teach people to do that?
Well, first of all, I do it one-on-one. Most of my offerings on the website fit under the umbrella of me being a question asker and an interviewer for many, many decades, mostly in television and in podcast and radio land, covering all those different mediums. So just a little bit of a background, the interviewing started really when I was like a wee 5-year-old and I was studying Barbara Walters in the 70s and I was interviewing my teddy bears because I was just a question asker and I was obsessed with my curiosity. And for whatever reason, that was the path that was sort of, predestined for me.
And where were you when you were 5 years old?
In New Jersey.
Whereabouts?
In the burbs. I grew up in Sterling and Watchung, New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know Jersey a little bit.
I know Jersey. I lived in Morristown.
Yeah.
In the 60s, early 70s, just in case anybody wondered how old I am. Yeah, I lived there.
I was there with you.
I was
there.
It was great. I loved it. As a kid, I didn't want to move around. And now I'm dating the fabulous Kimmy Berlin, I was telling you about, who lives down in Montclair. And it's her birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Kimmy.
Happy birthday, fellow Leo girl.
Oh, Leo girl.
Yes, I'm next week.
All right, back to, before we get sidelined on Leo and Lionsgate and all this stuff. Do you have a syllabus for teaching interviewing, or just it's in your head? No,
to be perfectly frank, I'm not a big framework person, and it's been a challenge for me because and then I will answer your question, but you're reminding me of a friend of mine. She's like a surrogate mother, and she's been a teacher at Columbia University Teachers College for many decades, teaching doctoral students. She had me come in a few years ago to help them kind of brush up on their interview and research gathering skills.
Right.
And I was challenged by, and these are, there's a lot of systems and process. And for me, it's so kind of concretized in my DNA that I know I think I helped them and served them, and I answered a lot of their questions, but I was better with the freestyling Q&A and more organic versus standing up in the front of the classroom with a syllabus or a framework. So that was a big awakening for me. I'm not a big framework person, and it is, some people might think that's a weakness, but for what I might lack in framework, I make up for in being in the moment, and my intuition and wealth of knowledge that I hope is floating around in my brain comes out and helps people. So to answer your question, when I'm working with an individual or even with groups, sometimes it starts with asking them what their intention and the context is for what help they need. Are they aspiring journalists? Are they somebody that just wants to learn how to find their voice? Is it someone's child who is a little bit shy and wants to empower themselves by knowing what their personal story is? So this all fits under the umbrella of what I offer versus just teaching to interview per se. A lot of it is really learning how to listen and to be present.
Right.
Which is, at least the first time I thought you and I met each other. That's a side story.
Right, our friend Catherine.
But I remember that about you, how present you were in a way that's so rare for people. And I have a hypersensitivity to it because I would like to think I share that with you. The desire to really listen and follow up and have questions.
Right.
So to me, that's something that a lot of people can stand to learn. So that's a big piece of what I try to do.
Right.
Helping people not to bring their own projections to their conversations. It's like mindfulness and consciousness inside of communication.
Right.
So that you're not there waiting, thinking about your next question, but you're really there to experience this person that you're asking questions of.
Right. Which is tough. I mean, if you're doing something like this, because I want to really be there, but I also, don't want dead air.
Right.
It's a live show. I want to think about what the next question is.
Yeah.
And so have you always been a curious kind of person? Were you a curious kid wondering who people are and what makes them tick and stuff?
Yes. And I drove my parents crazy. I guess a lot of children, I was very talkative. I was way more talkative when I was younger than I am now. I'm talkative maybe right in this moment, but I like to not
Thank
talk
goodness.
a lot too. I try to time it so it's appropriate if I'm showing up for a radio show. But yes, I was curious about, I would say probably lots of questions that, trying to remember, annoying my parents and sitting in the back of a car on a road trip. Right. Asking like who's the first, who's the leader and who's the car in front, like silly things, whimsical things that children ask. But I would say my memory of anything that had a little bit more gravitas to it was probably just observing human nature. Right. And really noticing and feeling deeply as a deeply sensitive kid and deeply sensitive adult. The nuance of humans and what makes them tick and what their intention is and what's happening behind their eyes and why they feel a certain way. I would say that's definitely more of what defines how I show up and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. So when you were a kid, you're asking all these questions. Were you aware that you were more? You said you were a sensitive kid. Were you aware that you're more sensitive than other kids? Did you have siblings?
I have one younger sister who's a year and a half younger.
And I just ask because that's the first person you measure against with this kind of stuff. But when were you first aware you were a sensitive kid?
Well, I would say probably it wasn't very embraced. It was probably a not pleasant lesson I had around it when I was younger, which was, oh, you're too sensitive. Oh, you're too idealistic. I remember hearing that from my parents a lot. It's not, it's not practical enough. You're going to struggle because you're in the clouds. So it was all tied together, like idealism, sensitivity. And then maybe in my first early relationships with men where I, oh, you're overreacting, like all those narratives that come back to you.
Right.
So it really took me until probably I started therapy in my 30s that I started to really embrace vulnerability and sensitivity and recognize what a strength they are.
Right.
Which is such a big piece of what's behind that space I try to hold for people in my work and in my friendships.
Right.
Is to really embrace the power of that because I don't think the society it indoctrinates us against the opposite, I believe, often.
Yeah, especially now like Elon Musk saying, compassion or empathy, I think he said, is one of the worst things in the world. It's like, wait a minute, and there's all these people, you, me, most people probably that we know, who are really pro-empathy and pro-compassion. And here he's sort of preaching the opposite, and lots of probably online men are doing that as well. And
men need it even more, at least women, and again, if I'm going to generalize here.
Please do.
At least, as, people that identify or are born women, we were historically taught that it was okay to cry and to have the emotionality in a way that generally men weren't, if you're just going to kind of split it down the middle that way. And so I have probably even a bigger heart and sense of compassion for men in this area because I think there's a lot more catching up and support that needs to happen. Right.
But you described, being a young girl, still people saying don't be so sensitive and stuff. Don't be a crybaby.
Yes.
So what were you doing? What made you go into therapy at 30?
What made me go into therapy is I was in a really sociopathic relationship with a boyfriend. And
Okay.
it was, frankly, it was like a cult of one. Now, in retrospect, I know that. I really do. And I don't mean to use that word flippantly. It really felt like the same dynamic. Real narcissist, real sociopathy. Obviously, I didn't know any of this at the time. I met him on the first big international trip that I took. I met him on the beaches of Goa on the Arabian Sea in India through a mutual friend.
Wow.
He was an American guy, but he was living between India and Prague. I was in California. It was like a long distance, romantic, exotic, worldly. And so I was denying all the real truths inside of me that were like the little person inside that was knocking on my soul saying, this is too controlling. This is too secretive. This doesn't feel right. A lot of gaslighting, a lot of alternate reality, and just the way he would handle things or kind of characterize dynamics in our relationship.
Right.
And I was carried away by the other, and I ignored my truth for a long time. And so finally, thank goodness, that's what started my therapy. It's usually crisis that takes us to therapy, right?
I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm in neutrality and I'm feeling good. Let me go see a shrink for the first time.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I hadn't thought of that. And you said too much secrecy. Was he demanding some kind of secrecy around the relationship?
Yeah, and I won't say, just to be clear, it wasn't. He was very psychologically and emotionally manipulative. There wasn't any physical or any kind of violations that way. And I'm not saying one is okay over the other. And also, to be perfectly frank, if we're going to go deep, which you don't seem like you'd scare easily from that.
Yeah.
It was a real reenactment of my relationship with my mom, who is on the narcissistic spectrum. So inevitably, I believe, we always find our mirrors in our families of origin, at least in the earlier relationships that we have, until we can learn to heal those wounds and undo. I'm simplifying, but I really believe that that's the case. So
Right.
he would try to think of just an example of what was so like private and
Did you ever live in the same place?
we did, yeah. I mean, he was living with me in Los Angeles, and then if I, said I don't agree with this or I want to go out with my friends, he would say, "Okay, I'm going to leave and move back to my family in Ohio," and hang these kind of weird threats over me. But because I was so taken by him and so young, relatively young for me, relationship-wise,
Right.
I didn't want to lose him. So it was at the expense of my own truth, my own alignment with myself.
And how long did this last?
On and off for cumulatively 5 years, but with some very big separations.
Right.
Because he was either living in, Europe, or I was traveling for work, or we were broken up. So
And how did it finally end?
I moved out of California back to New York.
Oh, wow.
I did. I was ripe to leave anyway. I'd lived in Los Angeles through all of the 90s, to where I cut my teeth on my TV career, early stages of my television career. And I was ripe to leave anyway and come back to New York. I just missed it. And my family was, here in the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York City, Long Island. But also, as a part of it was just it being the cleanest way, because I couldn't have a rational extrication from him, because it's not how he was made. I had to extricate myself from the state.
How did you keep him from following?
Well, frankly, we saw each other afterwards a few times because, wow, I haven't talked about this maybe ever. He owed me money because I was also caught up in supporting him based on this fantasy project that he was creating and writing about. I'm not even going to mention it because I don't even want to give it any cred here, because it was pretty unique. But in the process, I supported him in a way that he, thought he promised we were going to he was going to make me whole at some point, and it never did.
Right.
So, and I was probably still had my attachment. So when I came back to New York, whenever he was in New York City, we would get together, have lunch together, and it was my way of seeing if maybe I could still resolve all of that, which never happened.
Right.
He always had an excuse, and yeah.
An excuse for not getting better himself, not looking at himself?
Oh, that never happened. Yeah.
Right.
Nor paying me back, nor,
yeah.
all those things. And
Oof.
yeah, again, I'm giving you just like kind of the bare bones.
All right. Well, let's move on from there. You said you're living in LA, getting your TV business going. What were you doing in TV?
I was a television producer. So I started in New York City shortly before that. And then in 1990, I followed another boyfriend, a way healthier story, just to know, which preceded the one I just told you. I was younger then. I'd like to think you get wiser, but it's not a straight line often with relationships, right? And learning. So I moved out to California in 1990. I went out for what was supposed to be 3 weeks, and I ended up there for 9 years. And God bless my family, shipped all my stuff out in UPS boxes.
Wow.
And I started working in entertainment television at E! Entertainment, VH1, MTV, interviewing rock stars and celebrities and creating programming, long-form programming for those networks.
So you were doing the interviews?
I was, yeah.
So you landed in L.A. Within a month or so, you've got a job holding a microphone up to...
Pretty soon thereafter, yeah.
Tommy
Actually,
Lee
it was pretty. Yeah, it was
whoever.
pretty. Yeah, I mean, I could rattle off names that you'd probably appreciate because we have the same generation of. I don't know your music taste, but except the beautiful opening song that I just heard.
Yeah. So how did that come to pass that you get this amazing job that most people would be very envious of?
I probably literally walked in. I still do this. All these decades later, I've always been a pound the pavement, like literally in New York City, even before that. Would knock on doors when you could kind of still do that. I would identify where a recording studio was, or so I think I probably either marched into this place. This is at a time when you could kind of do that, when doors were more openable,
right?
You know, and
you didn't have to be
accessible.
buzzed in
Exactly.
and show your ID
security
and
was
fingerprints
different.
and all that.
I may have looked up a name of a producer there and tried to, worm my way in for an interview. I don't remember.
There
exactly.
being...
It was E! Entertainment TV.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my very first fresh off the...
So you got somebody's name...
I did.
Off of like closing credits of some show or wherever.
Something like that, yeah.
And you're like, I need to go talk to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And you did. And you knocked on... It sounds like you went to their office and knocked on the door.
Yeah. I don't want to sound bolder than I was, but I'm still pretty bold that way out of necessity. I can't remember exactly what I did, but it was something like that.
It's pretty bold.
Yeah.
It's a lot of chutzpah to just go do that. But you probably thought, like, what the heck? I mean, what are they going to do? Kick me out? I don't care. And so you knock on this person, and the guy or woman?
It was a woman. In fact, I just wished her happy birthday on Facebook today. It's funny.
Right. So you knock on her door, and you introduce yourself, and you say what?
I may have had an appointment. I actually may have had an appointment or an interview. I may have. That I was just looking for work, just the truth. I was a kid. I was hungry. I had schmoozed my way into a really sexy job very early on before I went to California, where I was working. Do you remember King Biscuit Flower Hour?
Yeah.
Well, this was King Biscuit Flower Hour TV, and they were doing pay-per-view concerts.
I remember that.
And I don't know how I always knew I was an interviewer, even though I hadn't done it professionally. I was very confident about that from my practice as a 5-year-old with my hairbrush. And so just the pre-story to what you're asking is that I found my way to jobs where I was interviewing the rock stars that were being featured in those pay-per-view concerts. I was doing like the pre-show. So by the time I got to California, I had a little bit of gravitas.
Right. You had a resume that was pertinent.
I did, yeah.
So why were you not an MTV VJ? I mean, that seems like a natural thing at that.
I probably fancied that, and they probably just didn't want me. Although I did have, you're reminding me of things that I haven't even thought about in a while. I did have my 15 Minutes of Fame on VH1 Grammy Red Carpet.
Oh, sweet.
I did. I hosted their live Grammy show in 1995.
And did you get to thrust the microphone in front of famous people's faces and ask them who they're wearing and stuff like that?
Well, I wouldn't have been very good at any of that. Like, I'm a good question asker. The style part, it wasn't probably... I think E was like right next to me on the carpet, and they, they were probably busy with those questions. I was trying to focus on music, I think.
That's good. Well, this is supposedly a music channel. And how did that come to pass?
I think it was the same thing. I think I identified somebody that was working at VH1. I was frankly working at E at the time, and E was not interested in giving me an on-camera job, which I had asked for.
Right.
And so I started moonlighting on the side at VH1, and somebody who was overseeing a burgeoning news department. They were based in New York City, but they had a burgeoning news department, news loosely, entertainment news, happening in Los Angeles. And she was supportive of me and whatever my efforts or resume was, and The next thing I knew, plop, and there I was. Really, like it happened out of nowhere. It really did.
So cool.
So it was really kind of unfounded, frankly.
Right.
Except I managed to kind of step into it and handle it pretty well.
Right. And get your hair done and find something nice to wear.
Yeah, it was kind of fun to actually I had a stylist for like 5 minutes. That was fun. Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Miss Fancy Pants.
I know. I was so fancy.
It just dawned on me as you're talking about all these doors you just sort of like put your foot in. You're here right now doing this because you wrote a couple of times being like, hey, what did somebody have to do to get an interview?
You?
Yeah.
Got more
same
time
thing.
on my hands now. So.
Oh, well. Yeah, but I mean, God bless you. I think a lot of people are afraid to do that or too shy to do that or don't want to be seen as rude or forward or whatever.
Thank you for
But
being receptive.
Clearly worked out very well for you.
Thank you.
So you're doing this stuff in New York City. It sounds idyllic. You went out to L.A., got this other job. You were there 9 years, moved back here to flee this fella.
That was part of it, yeah.
And
Big part of it.
And you landed back in New York City?
I did.
And what were you doing then?
I remember actually I landed literally like maybe the day after Hurricane Floyd because my dad lost his business to that flood. So that was like a very momentous time to land back.
What kind of business?
He had, this is obviously a long time ago, but he had a electronic and handmade tool and diamond drill business, like a distributorship that he had started from our basement when we were kids, like in the late, late 60s.
Right.
And so, he was in Bound Brook, New Jersey by the Raritan River. And that's a really rough story.
Oh, no.
It was a tough story. So I came back and then I found my way to work at VH1 here. I think I probably parlayed because I had the opportunity out there. So I probably knew some people at the offices here.
Right.
But then shortly thereafter, I was working at VH1, when I say here on the East Coast in New York, and I was doing documentaries for their news department. So I did I did one on white supremacist rockers, which was really fascinating because they sent me to interview these white supremacist rockers as a young Jewish liberal woman from New York.
So they sent you and a cameraman?
They sent me, the
person?
crew. I can't remember if the crew came with me from New York or if we hired them locally. And then to protect me, they hired somebody under the guise that he was going to be a production assistant. And when I showed up in the lobby that morning before the shoot to convene with the crew, before we went out to meet the people I was going to be interviewing, this huge husky guy in a suit is there. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to pass for an MTV PA. Like, we gotta tamp this all down a little bit.
Let's get you an Ozzy T-shirt.
Something. God bless Ozzy, by the way. That was one of my DIR interviews that I did for that other gig, by the way. Was Ozzy. It was like the first interview I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so they decided instead to open up a microphone and put it in the cameraman's knapsack and keep an open microphone to me and what was going on in the house that I was in, rather than have this big bruiser bouncer guy accompany me, because that was a ruse that was not going to be very successful.
Right.
And I was with these guys for 2 days outside of Detroit. And it was very powerful. It was great human interest, anthropological study in what's underneath those belief systems.
And what did you discover?
I would say the biggest takeaway was that, number one, they were equally as afraid of us.
Us being
the crew, just, somebody different, or just kind of being trepidatious about,
Right.
But I would say the biggest takeaway was when we went to the childhood neighborhood of one of the head people the second day, and we were doing sort of like a B-roll, shoot, kind of driving through his old neighborhood. And he starts having recollections of being beaten up by a bunch of other kids that were not white, and how that informed in him, and I'm not excusing or justifying any of this, but to get underneath the behavior that, we have such fear and generalizations about, and to
Right.
really understand from a psychological perspective
Right.
where people come from when their shadowy behavior starts to act up, to me is interesting and helpful. Again, it doesn't justify the behavior, but it showed that he had wounds and he was more vulnerable about
Right.
bad memories he had of being like, having the shit beat out of him by a bunch of kids
Yeah.
that now he was prejudiced against.
Yeah, it's
know?
interesting, it doesn't justify the behavior, and of course it doesn't, but how much emotional, physical abuse as a youth would justify
Nothing.
that? I mean,
Right.
it's a fine line.
Right.
And I said, well, no, of course I'm not justifying, but it's interesting to understand how somebody got there.
Yeah.
It's such a fine line between that and sort of justifying.
Exactly. It is.
Not condoning.
Exactly. Yeah. And even now, and I could talk, it's where's the line between like compassion and contempt,
Oh,
right? Because there's paradox, and even inside of your question, I think we can see both, right?
Right.
I don't know where the line is, but
Right.
I think it's important to at least be aware of all of that
Yeah.
as a human.
Well, yeah, the more aware of all of that stuff, I think the better off you are. So back to these white supremacist rockers. Was the music any good?
It wasn't my style,
Was it?
which doesn't say anything. It's
Was
not,
it heavy metal?
It was
kind of
pretty
stuff?
headbanging, heavy metal,
Right.
pretty aggressive. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. What an assignment. And so at that point, you're working. It was VH1, right?
It was VH1, yeah. And, yeah.
And you're getting other Plum assignments like that.
Yeah, the other one because it was sort of they were testing out a few new types of programs. So it was under some umbrella. I can't remember what they called it, but the other one was Whatever Happened to Leonard Skinner, sort of the fracturing of Leonard Skinner. So me and Jake Tapper, who's now of
Right.
CNN fame, were sent down to spend a lot of time in Florida and Jacksonville, where the current iteration at the time, this was again in whatever, it was right around 99, it was 2000, I guess?
Right.
99, 2000?
So still, not all the original members were
Correct,
still
right,
alive.
they weren't, yeah. And then there were still a few that were still holding the crux of the estate and the publishing rights and all these things. It was, I think, is it Ed King that wrote the...
Oh, don't ask me.
His name's just he's the anyway, I'm throwing out too many references. I can't keep track of my own. And Artemis Pyle was the
What a great name.
drummer who
Uh-huh.
lived there, and he was a real character. And so we had quite an adventure being down there, and that's when I learned how smart Jake Tapper is. Yeah, not here to do any. I don't know him anymore, but I just remember him being really smart and really good at what he did. And fun to be around too.
And so you were there with him? You're in the same team?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was the on-camera talent, and I
Uh-huh.
was his producer. Yeah.
And so as you were watching him, because you'd been the on-camera talent, the month before.
Well,
or
for
whatever.
my 15 minutes of Andy Warholian
I
fame.
see. But were you watching a master? Were you taking notes? Were you thinking like, oh my God, this guy's just fucking amazing?
I think I was too busy just being there to support him and make a good documentary. I don't really
Right.
think I was personalizing that part of my career so much, and
Right.
I was really comfortable for whatever I aspired to be in terms of more of my own voice or brand or on camera or on mic myself. There have been plenty of times where I wasn't thinking about that and was equally happy and spent more time supporting other talent
Right.
behind the scenes and just trying to be a good, strong producer for them,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just funny now because now he's got such a
Doing
platform and a
doing
big
great.
voice and all of that. So I think I haven't thought about this in a while. It's kind of fun to think about where we were then. I don't know if he'd still be happy to remember it, but it was a fun experience.
Yeah, I mean, just reading your resume, you've had a really very interesting life and done crazy interesting things. When you look back on all of it, what were some of the real low points? I was going to go high. I thought, well,
Yeah. Low personally or specifically professionally?
Yeah.
Wow. There were a good amount. First of all, I've been on a roller coaster. My trajectory has been very uneven with the level of employment and unemployment. Like TV in and of itself is a pretty precarious, and especially if you're not working at the network per se, if you're working on shows, there's so much transience and volatility. And so I've had a real erratic ride with my employment. That's been really hard, like very gainful, and then real like long periods of time with very little.
Right. And I was never in that business, but it seems like many people in that business do have those kinds of ups and downs and hiatuses and all that stuff.
Yeah. I wish they were just hiatuses. Some of the paid hiatuses were great for when I worked at some fancier shows that, you know, where we were just off for a summer and I was an executive. And there was a time when I was working at E, and again, I was, you know, in my 20s, and I was interviewing this. I won't use any names, but I was interviewing a very, like a A-list female celebrity. And at the end of the interview, she was handled by a very established, very esteemed publicist. Publicists are made of a certain personality, generalizing. And I might have said something personal to her, or I might have said, you know, here's my business card to this actress. And I got sort of blackballed by that publicist for a while. I was just like, you know, I didn't have any major agenda. I wasn't looking to become best friends with this particular young actress.
Right.
I don't remember what my intention was. I don't know what happened thereafter. Maybe the interview was so deep for her that she had some aftermath I'll never know about. I don't know.
Right.
But for a bunch of months after that, I remember that my bosses were not giving me certain interviews, or there was one interview that with another very, very high-profile A-list male celebrity that this publicist also represented. And I remember going to do the interview, and they like packed him up and had him leave before I even showed up. So I was like being sabotaged. I was so unimportant to this person. You know, I was just like, there's nothing about me that could have been very threatening to her at all. But somehow in her head I was.
Some transgression.
Yeah, like, so, you know, a lot of, I have plenty of stories like that. All kinds of, you know, when you deal with humans and personalities, and especially like creative types or in the spiritual wellness space, I've also experienced it a lot.
Right.
A lot of like, I'm trying to be nice here.
I'm
trying to be diplomatic.
Try to be nice.
You know, like just fracture, just not integrated personalities, like a lot of shadowy behaviors that get projected onto you for reasons that really don't have much to do with you, even when you're trying to be accountable. A lot of duplicity in a lot of TV shows I've worked on and in other organizations where the outward facing is that they're there to do well and to work in wellness or health, but behind the scenes, not nice, not good, not healthy. So from a meta perspective, you know, I'm such a believer in us all trying to kind of walk our walk to the best of our ability. And I've experienced so much of the opposite. And those have created really hard times for me in those moments.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how did you finally get out of that business?
They probably got out of me. I think I just got aged out. I was working. So the last really gainful kind of sexy TV job I had was at the Dr. Oz show from 2009 to 2014. And put aside, I don't know who he is right now. I don't know him anymore. I don't know what is in his heart and his mind. But at the time, it was a really, really exciting, legit, full of integrity, very hardworking, very difficult show to work on. I also did that. I pursued him cold. That's how I got the job. I wrote him a letter at Columbia University. I got, you know, I was living in Portland, Oregon. I created trips to New York City to tell them, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can I come meet with you? Right. So I got hired there. And I'm trying to remember what your question is because I'm talking so much.
Oh, how did you get out of the business or vice versa? Yeah.
So I got downsized out of there in 2014, and I spent 6 years of mostly like severe underemployment. It was really hard. And I freelanced, and friends hired me for a lot of the aforementioned shows and organizations that we've talked about. But that was...
Were you living in the city at that point?
I was living in New Jersey, just outside New York City.
Okay.
And I kind of got aged out. You know, like it's like you wake up and you realize you're not technically inclined. You're not, suddenly all the young people that were starting to come up were wearing multiple hats. They were overseeing the cameras. They were also doing the editing and the audio. They were, I say in quotes, storytellers, but they didn't have the seasoning. I'd come up in a silo where I was, and still am, really professed at interviewing and storytelling and relating in a heartfelt way. But they were wearing more hats, and it was just what the industry has changed so much, and it's way more efficient and economical now. And now there's been so many other things with strikes and fallouts and media conglomerate drama and all kinds of things.
So while you're doing all that, the producing and the interviewing and stuff, when did you start to think of yourself as a storyteller?
I'm not sure that I even can remember when that word resonated for me. I think probably it was the industry that dictated it, or my resume, just because it was like a, it kind of encapsulated everything that we did as producers, field producers specifically, more than studio producers, being out in the world and dropping into people's lives. And once I started even thinking about that word, just to get, this is more semantics, but I actually look at myself more as a story facilitator. Like the story is there, the situation is there, versus creating it from cold. So like somebody who works in episodic or fiction TV, they create from scratch, which I would not be able to do very well. Dialogue and creating something from nothing. It's the reason I still only really watch nonfiction entities, and I'm not really, it's just the way my brain works.
You only watch nonfiction? You don't?
I do. I'm pretty, it's very rare that I watch fictional anything.
Huh.
I know.
Well, what's the last awesome nonfiction TV you've seen?
I watch a lot of like short documentaries on Netflix.
Right.
What did I just watch the other night? I'm trying to remember with my boyfriend. I can't remember right now. I'll get back to you on that.
Get back to me on that. And you mentioned earlier that you started to get in sort of like the spiritual space.
I did.
How did that come to pass in your life? Was that around the time of the shrinkage, the therapy?
Well, personally, I've always been in that space.
Okay.
From as long as I can remember. Literally like being 5 or 8 years old and feeling like there was something, a man up in the sky who was in sort of in control of everything in a good way, like, just overseeing everything.
Was it connected with religion at that point?
I grew up very not observant, Reformed Jewish, and really just on one side. My mother was more agnostic. So we were, we celebrated the holidays culturally. We connected with that. But I would say my spiritual belief system, which is way more non-denominational and now probably more rooted in like Hinduism, Buddhism combo, but I didn't know any of that at the time. So I would say no, it wasn't really, it was separate. And it just organically kind of was there. My mom was going to spoon bending classes and transcendental meditation classes in the 70s, and coming home and taunting us with this secret mantra that she would, tell us, I have a secret word, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And I think that, so I was kind of around it, even if I wouldn't necessarily use some of these examples as like the exemplary spiritual experience. TM certainly, but not spoon bending.
Spoon bending. Can we land on that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid, there was this guy, this Russian dude, Yuri Geller.
Yeah,
was
I remember.
His name.
Yeah.
And he bent spoons with his mind. And I don't know how many hours I spent trying that. I was like, certainly I can muster the willpower to make that happen. I'm never successful.
When's the last time you tried?
Oh, I must have been 9 or something.
Might be. Is there a spoon around?
I'll get one. I'm gonna get a plastic spoon. Spoon snapping.
You might be due.
So your mom was moved by that similarly, I guess.
Yeah.
And you were probably aware of what she was hoping to do and what people were doing with the spoon bending.
Yes, just not in any real depth. Just knowing she was doing these kind of offbeat, quirky things and disappearing for like weekend intensives. And so
Right.
again, now in retrospect, I wouldn't necessarily connect these with the kind of spirituality that I live inside of.
Right.
But it was just, it was exposure, I think, to things that are more amorphous, more extra sensory,
Right.
that's probably where those seeds got planted,
Yeah.
So it was always in me. And then it really wasn't until my 20s. It was because of a boyfriend who carried crystals in his pocket that somehow it started to become a little bit more of an active curiosity, where I was going to metaphysical bookstores and
Right.
angel workshops and
Angel workshops?
all kinds of
And
exploration.
sure, why not? And now, I mean, where do you stand in terms of believing in that stuff? And that stuff is a huge,
I know, it's big.
chest of things.
It's my number one most important thing. It's an everyday practice. It's the lens that I try to use. I mean, I forget on a lot of days to get caught in being a human and all kinds of behaviors that aren't so transcendent and spiritual, but it's my aspiration every day is to know what I would call knowing God or knowing spirit or knowing the divine.
Okay.
And embodying that as actively and constantly as possible and quietly. I talk about it maybe with my very close circles, but it's not something I talk about so much.
Right. And the thousands of listeners who are tuned in right now. Well, I mean, I'm with you on all of that, but I'm not sure I'm with you if you're still, I'm not with the crystal thing. Mm-hmm. Do you still think that they're the energy that you're sort of talking about, and the divine and all that, that crystals are special receptacles for this kind of energy?
Yes, I do. And I'm not even actively, I'm reasonably knowledgeable. We have a good amount of them around our house. I find them beautiful. I don't have the same resonance as I did when I first began with that story that I referenced. But I think just because of how old they are and the age of this earth and the purity from which they come untouched at the core of inside this planet Earth, that they do hold an energy that's very ancient and all-knowing. Yeah. In terms of the science of it, I can't even sit here and talk intelligently about
Science, schmience. But you have them around your house. Are you ever drawn to them and pick them up and sort of have them on you, live with them for a little bit?
I used to. I don't as much anymore. I'm keenly aware that, your chakra system, which is your energy system, which is based on very ancient Hindu belief system in terms of your energy areas in your body, are all have different colors that are attached to them, and those different colors have different stones, for example. So there can be some people use them very concretely that way. I don't as much anymore. No. But I have.
Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think maybe you just shift your resonance. I think it's probably the same answer that I can't put into words as to why I don't follow a lot of spiritual teachers and influencers. It's a little bit different, but I feel like it's just become more internalized, my process.
Right.
And maybe a little less, I don't want to say academic, but a little less action driven. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well,
it just could be, maybe I just changed my tune.
It's a little bit less results focused and more, outer world results and more just inner you results.
Maybe.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
But in your teaching and reading about what you do, I mean, you seem very much a teacher. As much as anything else, and this new thing you've got going. Tell people the URL again.
Thank you for asking. TheInnerViewer.net. Interviewer with 2 N's.
The Interviewer.
Yes, as a play on interviewer.
Yes.
.net.
And in that website you're offering, they all sound sort of like you were teaching people, helping them to accomplish what they want, to become better versions of themselves, helping them to learn how to interview, as we discussed. Do you feel that you're a teacher?
Wow. No one's ever asked me that question before. Thank you. Not surprised to hear a thoughtful question like that from you. I don't know if I have a great, smart answer.
Right. But right now, it doesn't seem like it doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't sound like it doesn't fit.
You're not squirming.
No, I'm not squirming. I think I have such reverence for teachers. It's probably the industry that's intimidated me more than any other over the years.
Right.
And I've had I had a therapist a long time ago tell me that that's something I should definitely consider. And I think it daunts me. So I don't know, as much as I feel like, yes, on the days where I feel more empowered, I probably have things to share. And I know I do.
Right.
And but I probably do it in looser formats where I'm holding like question circles or more interactive mentoring where people are conversing and we're holding kind of space together, than being at the front of like a classroom. Not that it has to happen that way. I guess I don't know. Maybe it makes me feel insecure.
Huh. But your clients for the, that you get for the interviewer, you describe it's mostly one-on-one stuff.
Yeah, it can be small groups, not big groups. That wouldn't really serve anybody. Sometimes it's smaller groups, and yes, a lot of times one-on-one.
Right. Yeah. And I guess the beginning question of this was: do you teach the things that you've learned in your own spirituality? Do you find yourself sharing them a lot with your clients?
I do. Yes. I have. I've been blessed with some amazing therapists and teachers along the way, spiritual teachers. One in particular who's been my biggest life changer, who I've known now for about 6 years. He's in California, and he's taught me the deepest process that has to do with sort of spiritual psychotherapy as his modality. And it's very deeply in me, and it's helped me tremendously. And while I'm not like a certified therapist, I do teach some of those styles of process. And now I'm using the word teacher, or I share and encourage other people with some of that process. Yeah. So, and it just depends, when I work with one-on-one clients where it's more in the kind of life guidance area versus just straight away interviewing or brand storytelling.
Right.
Which is also like, those are the offerings you're speaking of on my website. It really depends on the person, for some people it's life skills. For other people, there's probably a little bit more of a spiritual kind of basis to it.
Right.
For other people, it might be mirroring back patterns that they have and doing a lot of deep listening. A lot of it's like an amalgam of other things you'd experience with a life coach or a therapist. I just I can't call myself any of those things.
Right.
But a lot of other people do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's nice, as I just did.
Thank you.
A teacher.
Thank you.
So one of the things you talk about a lot in your online, and you're everywhere. You've got your website and interviews, and every job you ever had has your bio up online.
There's been a lot of change.
And they all say deep listening. They all talk about your listening skills, which I think is rarely innate. I don't think little kids are good listeners. I think they're famous for the opposite. When did you first decide you wanted to start developing that skill?
I think it started developing way before I knew I wanted to. It happened very organically and unintentionally.
Right.
Now I can look back, with a lot of therapy and more awareness and self-awareness and deep self-inquiry, and tell you that the roots of it were growing up with a mentally ill mother on the narcissistic spectrum, and a complicit father. God bless their souls, both of them. But it wasn't an easy road, and I never felt listened to. And so I feel like our superpowers often are our reactions to our wounds and our lacks when we're younger. That's at least my, my unprofessional theory.
Right.
So for me, it was just intrinsic in who I was forever, and then I started to be able to use it professionally, and then I started to be able to put a name on it.
Right. was interesting to hear you use that word to describe your father in that narcissistic relationship as being complicit.
Yeah, he was also they were both many other things. Very special, dynamic people and many other things, but for the sake of this context.
But it also makes me think about that relationship that you fled in L.A.
Yeah.
Did you feel complicit in that?
Yes.
Right.
I guess I was.
Right.
I was also, I'm not a big user of the word victim because I wasn't. I would say yes. I would say I was enabling it.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me ask this. I'm always curious about this because there are schemers out there.
Yeah.
But my theory is that there's even more. There are people who were just unwittingly allowing their self-conscious to scheme. I don't think there's a lot of masterminds being like, I've got a great plan. I'm going to do this. Then, not sort of master chess players with people's emotions and stuff.
Exactly.
People who like subconsciously are setting things in motion. And you've had experience with some of these people. I guess I'm asking, how do you like my theory?
I agree with it. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where it's kind of like the difference between sort of compassion and contempt when we were talking about that. I think that everybody's origins of who they are and how they got loved or not loved is the deepest, most informative foundation for how they show up and project out into the world, whether it's light or shadow.
Right.
And so I don't think I don't think this part is conscious. I wish it was for more people or were for more people. I think it only comes from when you decide to do the work or you've had, too much pain or your trauma's gotten the best of you and you actually start waking up and looking in the mirror and getting the professional help that you can be aware of areas where maybe you did it. I won't say consciously, but you're a little less blind to what you did, that it wasn't all just sort of by rote. But I would say to your question, yes, I would say maybe the biggest percentage it just sort of happens not consciously.
Right.
Yeah, not intentionally.
Yeah.
And again, that's maybe people would say I'm making excuses for a lot of bad behavior.
I was just going to bring it back to that. And you're in a relationship now, and you said it's been a few years. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing it's nourishing and healthy, and
it is
in all kinds of ways that that you wanted, maybe not had before.
Yeah, it's true.
How did you make yourself ready for that?
Well, I had to wait till I was 59 and a half years old, and he had to wait till he was 63 and a half years old.
Oh, I was really hoping you were going to say 27.
Well, and I also say that because I have so many friends. I spent so much time solo. I was not really, he was in relationships and marriages and raised children. And I spent so much time as a single person to the point where it got habituated and I got really good at it and always aspired for relationships. But when I finally got into like a really, this one, I had to shed a lot of that professional singleness in a way that I never knew I'd have to. So I say this also to give people hope. It's never too late to find it. Right. And I also want to say, I don't want to minimize, I had some beautiful relationships when I was 19 and 20 and, and thereafter also that I'm really grateful for. I got myself ready by doing really deep work on myself. And sometimes I still look at, I look at him, I say this to him a lot. I still look at him and it still feels surreal because I'm so used to the opposite. And it's been hard too. We do a lot of work. We both showed up with a lot of stories and a lot of dynamics that, we've been in therapy since we started our relationship, both individually and together. Right. And and it's, hard won. We work hard at it and it comes from a big place of love. We feel like there's a lot of, karmically predestined work to do. So if you can show up in a relationship, even if it's hard or you're inflaming each other's stuff, you either inflame each other and you walk toward it by healing it, or you skedaddle and you repel, right? Right. And you have to decide. It's like a conscious decision. Yeah. As long as it's not too hard. That's like, where do you...
If it's
that
too
line,
hard, I think
right?
most people just, weigh that difficulty versus what they're getting.
Yeah, right.
And like lots of people skedaddle.
Yeah.
Huh. So you said you had to shed a lot of the professional singleness
I
stuff.
did.
What things were they?
Talking more.
Oh, you had to,
it's like I had to learn to be with somebody, just like sharing space.
right.
And, oh my goodness. The compromise piece, mirrors of who I am and my behavior, parts of me that didn't even know, little tinges of things like, I'm not full on OCD, but I have tinges, things that when you're alone, you don't think about. If, you want to pick up that speck off the floor, you just sort of do it and you don't think about it. And now when there's another person, it's such a mirror for all the parts of us that we don't pay attention to, and it's just us, right?
Yeah.
So
What
many
was
other...
what was the most surprising thing you saw about you in that mirror that this guy sort of brought to the party?
Oh, wow. Wow. Such a good, hard question. The most surprising thing. I would say probably how, despite my my yearning and my deep desire and my all the years of crying and complaining to everybody who I know and love about how single I was, that when I finally got this gift kind of plopped in front of me, I wasn't as fully ready and receptive as I thought I was when I was alone. That was probably the biggest surprise. You talk about it, you want to be partnered, and then you have all your friends say it's not as easy as you think, and it's true. It takes a lot of work.
And y'all live together.
We do, yeah.
Which is a whole nother layer of difficulty and mirrors that are not always reflecting pretty stuff.
Yeah, it's... He also works part-time down in the tri-state area, so that he will be gone for a few days here and there throughout the month. And at the beginning, I was thrilled about it. I couldn't wait for it to happen. And now, thankfully, I don't feel that way because we've found our way closer to each other and found more spaciousness around each other's stuff.
That's so sweet.
And our own stuff, even more, our own, how we show up.
Right. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
And do you have an anniversary? Do you celebrate a particular anniversary?
We do. Yeah. June 10th was was only our second anniversary. It's crazy. We always say 2 years and like 100 lifetimes because it feels like it's been like 30 years.
Right.
For better or worse. It's true. I still can't fathom that it's only been, we've packed a lot in terms of like emotional, relational stuff, a lot.
Right. Just amazing. Well, guess what? We're like out of time.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Wow, fastest hour of my life.
We didn't even get to, we didn't even get to Santeria in an apartment in Havana.
Thanks for all the research.
We didn't get to a polygamous Mormon family inviting you to become a family member. We didn't get to you getting to follow Ken Kesey around. We didn't get to so much stuff, including your time here in Rhinebeck at the Omega Institute.
Yeah, thank you for just even doing such nice research and reminding me of those things.
Oh my God, so much stuff. And now is the time I say thank you so much, Kelly Alpert, for coming.
Thank you, Norm. So fun.
Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Happy Friday to everybody. Thanks to Jen Hammoud.
Thank you, Jen.
The producer extraordinaire. And to Patricia Wend and Cliff here at the Epicurean for letting us broadcast from this booth at the back of this fabulous corner store. And everybody have a great Friday and a fabulous weekend. Thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you.